Hello there, people of the internet. I'm Jadopico the Prop Maker, and welcome back to another video. And no, this is not the costume I'm going to be wearing when I show off the swords. This is just to stay in tune with the theme of the video, because if you've been watching my channel lately, or even a couple of other channels which I will mention just now, you will know that I was foolish enough to challenge Wolf from Armory Terrain to a pirate-themed sword-making competition. I also challenged Max Sterling, but since he has a more strict upload schedule, he won't be getting to the challenge as quickly as Wolf did. So it was foolish of me to challenge Wolf in hindsight to a sword-making competition, particularly a pirate-themed sword-making competition, since he ran a pirate-themed live-action roleplay group out of Brisbane, Australia for 10 years. So yeah, he's probably going to flatten me. But I am not one to back down from a challenge, especially if I'm the one who challenged him. So I'm going ahead, and I'm making two versions of the Sword of Blackbeard. One based on more fantasized versions and more artistic depictions of Blackbeard, what have you, and one that's more grounded in history, based on a historical finding from the wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then see my previous video. I'll try and link it down in the description below. So, without further ado, let's get to it. I'm gonna die. So, in an unfortunate turn of events, any footage I had recorded for this Pirate Sword challenge prior to this had been lost because of a power outage, and my phone went flat, so my memory got completely wiped and the footage was lost, so there's nothing we can do about it. As you can see, stuff has already been done on the swords that I didn't record. Well, I had recorded it, but then the footage got wiped and lost, so there's nothing we can do about it. Let's just press on. This is what's going to be the Blackbeard Wolf's Head sword. The idea with these lines I've drawn on the part here is going to be, the idea is once I take the belt sander to them, they should make sort of a recurve like you see here on my wooden knife. If not identical to my wooden knife, then at least similar. Then we got this plank here, ignore that, that's not important. We got this plank here that I'm going to use as like a D-guard, knuckle bow, and of course my random bits of wood box, and in case I want to add something to this sword, just containing random offcuts and stuff from previous projects. For the wolf's head on this sword, I intend to use crazy clay. I intend to build up like a wooden armature of the wolf's head, then build around that with crazy clay, and then sculpt it into a wolf's head. And I have done cool stuff like that in the past, like the guard and pommel on my Conan sword. Now with a slightly different paint job, but that's beside the point. Still the same sword. Then here is what I'm going to be using for the midshipman's hanger. This is going to be the blade portion. You can see I've already drawn the point on it. These bits are going to form the guard. This is going to form the handle. It's not in its current state, of course. I'm going to sand it over, maybe cover it over with some cloth tape, and then paint it to look like ivory. And then this wooden knob used to be part of a curtain rail. It was beaten up a little bit when I found it, so I had to neaten it up a bit on the belt sander. That's why it looks the way it does. But this is going to be the pommel of our hanger. Now I know what some of you are going to be saying. James, the flat wooden portion you're using for the blade isn't going to fit perfectly inside this tube. I know that. I've thought of something. This is crazy clay. This is the stuff I use for a lot of my projects, including my wands and my infamous Conan sword over there. And this stuff, it's brilliant. It's a bit like crazy clay, but it dries. It is crazy clay. What am I saying? It's a bit like Play-Doh, but it has a different consistency and dries to a sort of EVA foam kind of consistency. But this stuff is a bit older, so as you can see, it's not as malleable as it used to be. Yeah, and it's lost a lot of its stick, so not much use for modeling. So I brought a new pack for the wolf head sword, and for the hanger what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the inside of this tube with the older stuff here, because it's about to dry anyway, so we might as well put it to some use. Fill the inside of the tube with it, and then once it's filled, I'm gonna trim it so that it. So as you can see, I've sawn the little nib here off of the knob, and that is so I can now super glue the knob to this bit of wood I've stuck in the tube here. It probably would have been more stable if I'd drilled a hole here and then stuck it in thusly, as well as gluing it, but I think for my purposes a fit this loose is going to be fine. My bed is a complete mess at the moment, just clean washing bits of wood, glue. Ignore that, that's another project I'm working on. As you can see, the knob is now firmly, the pommel is now firmly onto the handle. I've super glued it there, and there was a little bit of a gap, so I filled that up with hot glue and then neatened it up. Hopefully that will be less noticeable when it's all finished. I shortened the handle a little bit, because otherwise we would have wound up with a two-handed midshipman's dirk, which is not what we want. And as you can see, I've cut the tang into the blade part, and that'll go inside the tube here, and then on top of that will be the guard. As you can see, I've glued three, well technically it's five, no it's four, I can't count today, 4 pieces of wood in such a way that they will form a guard that will slide on here. That will be held in place with 2 bamboo pegs or pins, but first I need to make sure it's shaped. So while the glue is still wet, I'm going to take it to the vise and clamp it until the glue is dry. I can't speak today either. Until the glue is dry, and then I'll shape it, and then I'll slip it on, and then we'll tack it in place. So I did some more shaping on the blades and handle of each of the swords. I gave the hanger the standard hanger blade shape, single edge. It is going to be single edged. Both of these swords are going to be single edged. I don't know why I put a back bevel in each of them. As you can see, my plan to put a slight curve in this one worked somewhat. It works better if you've got a wider piece of wood, but yeah, I'm proud of it. Now to put in some fine work into one, shaping the handle of this one and fixing this blade to the handle. So after a much angle grinding and belt sanding later, you can see I've put the edge on the blade of the hanger as well as on the cutlass, and I made sure that the curve was much more pronounced and smooth. And I also got the guard for the hanger. So that's how it's going to fit on. Now I just need to put some quill-ons on the guard. And then we should be ready to put it all together. I still have a bit to go with this one until I can start with the clay molding on the head. But I think this is a good amount of progress. So let's just see where it takes us, shall we? Well, as you can see, I've taped the handle like I said I was going to do, just to cover up the fact that it's plastic. I'm going to paint over the handle and pommel and guard once it's fit on, so that it looks like it's all one solid cast piece of bronze. I think I'm going to go with bronze. Or maybe, yeah, maybe I'll just have to wait and see. I may do the handle part painted white to look like ivory, and the pommel and crossguard brass, but we'll just have to wait and see. Or bronze. Speaking of the guard, as you can see, I have attached the quill-ons. Now all that's left to do is, if the camera wants to focus properly, no, it doesn't want to focus properly. Anyway, here, I've drawn some lines, and my aim is to round off the corners here to make it look more like a quillen guard. And that's going to fit on here. You can see I've drilled 2 holes, and also in the blade here. That's to accommodate the bamboo pins that are going to hold everything together. And as you can see, the lightweight clay I stuck inside the handle has gone hard, and it's now foamy, and it's holding the thing in place very well. So we will proceed, and then I'll start adding the final touches to the wolf's head sword. And here we are. The hanger is fully constructed. As you can see, I've got the guard fitted in place with the bamboo pins sanded down smooth, and the guard is now looking really like the guard of a midshipman's hanger. Now it's time to begin the painting process, and I'm going to start that by painting the hilt in primer to make it look like one solid piece. Or, you know, maybe I won't. Maybe I will paint it with primer, but then I'll paint it to look like it's not one solid piece, and that the guard and pommel are metal, whereas the handle is made of carved ivory or something. I'll figure it out when I get to it. Point is, I'm about to start the painting process on this one, and while I wait for the paint to dry on it, I'm going to continue work on the larger cutlass. And here we've glued on another piece of plank, and we've drawn on the rough outline of the wolf's head. That's going to be ground in later. And the guard for this sword, the cross guard, which is going to sit across here, is currently in the vise with the glue drying. And my plan is I'm going to put a cross guard on it, going to give the cross guard some quill-ons, and then off of the Quilond crossguard, I'm going to super glue a knuckle bow of sorts. And then once that's in place, I can start applying the clay and the finishing touches. But now let's see how the midshipman hanger is coming. So as you can see, the handle of the midshipman's hanger is now solid white because of the primer. The primer is not quite dry yet, it's still a bit tacky. Well, not tacky, but you know, it's still a bit sticky. So I'm going to leave it for a few hours more, and then I don't think I'm going to add another coat. I think it looks fine as it is. I think I'm just going to go straight on to painting. I took a saw to this part of the wood. That's just so there's less material to grind off, which is in turn going to make it easier for the abrasives later on. So as you can see, I've ground the shape or rough shape of the wolf's head into the pommel. Now I just need to wait for the guard to finish drying, or the glue on the guard to finish drying, and I can start putting this bad boy together. Meanwhile, the midshipman's hanger is still drying. And here is the guard for my Blackbeard wolf's head sword now that the glue has dried, or what will be the guard. So my plan is chop off these excess bits of wood here, smooth it out, even it out, shape it, add some quillons, do some final shaping, and once more fix it to the sword with bamboo pegs. Then once the crossguard is on, I can start thinking about adding the knuckle bow, and then I can start thinking about adding the clay. So as you can see, the crossguard has been shaped and the handle has been wrapped in some triple twist string, which hopefully when it's finished and painted a metallic color, it resembles a wire wrap, which was a common feature on ornate pirate swords back in the day. And over here you can see this is going to be the knuckle bow. So I'm going to pin the guard in place with a bit of skewer here, with some acting as bamboo pins. I'm going to super glue the knuckle bow in place, and let's see how this turns out, shall we? And there we go. The D guard is fully in place. I think it looks pretty good so far. It's a bit noticeable, the seam is a bit noticeable right now, but once it's all covered over with crazy clay and painted, no one's going to notice. So yeah, I'm going to let the glue cure for a couple of hours, and I'm going to apply the clay, and then I'm going to prime it and do whatever I need to do to it. Then we can start painting, along with the midshipman's hanger over there. Okay, several hours later, and the clay is now in place. All the seams are hidden, and our wolf's head pommel has been sculpted. Now the clay will need several more hours to dry before I can start painting, so I'm gonna just slip the sword in there and leave the clay to dry to a similar consistency of EVA foam, Please excuse my dog playing with the squeaky toy in the background there. Meanwhile, the primer on the handle of the, or hilt of the midshipman's hanger has fully dried. I would start ordinarily, once the primer has dried, I would start painting around this time. But we've just been notified that in half an hour's time, we're going to be having another power cut. So you can imagine it's not going to be a very pleasant experience painting in the dark. And the power outage is going to last from 6 p.m. to 8:30. So yeah, not looking forward to trying to paint in the dark. So I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to come back to that when the power comes back on. Meantime, I'm going to make sure that my device has plenty of charge so that I can avoid losing any more footage. While I'm at it, you won't be seeing my flintlock pistol in the presentation of these swords because it's broken. The hammer and the catch have come completely off, and the knobs that held them in place have broken off too, so there's not even a chance of gluing them back on. But first, a bit of backstory behind this gun. It used to be an airsoft gun. I bought it cheap from a Chinese market. You know the ones, the one that are usually run by Chinamen who don't accept cards, who bring in all sorts of cheap bootleg merchandise. This is one of them. I tried it, and it wasn't that good of an airsoft gun. It was alright, but for the price I paid, I think it was a bit underwhelming. And it broke after the 10th shot, after which time I glued the lever down and glued the BB hatch shut, because it was still a cool looking gun and I wanted to use it as a prop pistol. But then came this. The hammer and the catch broke off. But to be fair, that was partly my fault. I was the one who super glued them down. I was the one who used super glue on cheap plastic and then stored it in a bag full of clothing and stuff, which would be carried around and stuff and shoved in the back of a car, and expected it to get out free of damage. So that was partly my fault, but I guess the moral of this story is, if you're going to buy a gun like this from one of those cheap Chinese shops, don't store it in a bag full of other stuff and stuff it carelessly in the back of a car, because it's liable to break even further than it already does. So, I've given the hanger its first coat of underpaint, which is Battleship Grey. That should help to get the metallic effect, and when that paint dries I will start putting the final touches on it. Meanwhile, the clay has dried on the cutlass and I have painted it with a layer of primer. You can't see the details too well. If I move closer you can a bit. Yeah, so once this layer of primer has dried in a few hours, I will add another layer, and when that second layer is dried I will then start the final painting on the cutlass. So yeah, we are nearing the final stretch of this competition. Second coat of primer on the cutlass and second layer of paint on the hilt of the hanger is done. Now I just have to wait for each of them to dry before I can move on to the next step of each. So, to give the hilt more of an aged look, I'm going to use black as an undercoat. Maybe I'll do the same to the blade. But I'm not going to show you any more of the hanger just because it's basically done all I need to do is metallizing, and by metallizing I mean make the brown of the hilt look more like bronze and define the edge on the blade. But yeah, this is basically going to be, I basically started painting on the cutlass and I'm going to continue working through tonight, so hopefully they will be done by tomorrow. So I decided not to film any more of the painting process because all of the painting on the swords was basically done, and all that was left to do was the metallizing. But if I showed you those parts, then I would spoil the appearance of the swords in their final look. So I decided to leave the next part of the process a mystery and just take a bit of a stroll around the farm while I wait for the paint to dry. So I'm going to do a bit of a cut here, and the next footage you see will be of me showcasing the swords. And in 3, 2, 1. So here we are at the end of the challenge. A full 5 days worth of work later, and here are the swords. Here is the hanger. Fairly basic design, but not so basic as would be boring. The guard and pommel both painted bronze, and the handle painted to look like carved ivory, or possibly it could be some kind of horn, maybe deer horn or narwhal tusk, if you want to stick with the nautical theme.
Narwhals swimming in the ocean, causing a commotion, cause they are so awesome.
So, frick out! Sorry about that. So yeah, fairly basic sword design. We got the recurved crossguard. That was common on many hangers in those days. Those that didn't have a D-guard anyway. And for those of you who want to get technical, this sword is referred to as a hanger, a hunting sword, a dirk, and also a short saber. So that's basically what it is. It's a short saber, single-edged sword meant for slicing, but the tip could also be used for thrusts. So yeah, fairly basic sword design. I say basic, the bronze and the horn, whatever you want to call the handle, would be more on the expensive line of hangers. More basic ones that would be carried by regular sailors would be maybe have a wooden handle wrapped in some kind of leather, maybe shark skin, and would probably have like iron bits rather than bronze. But hey, still fairly basic sword design, but not to be taken lightly. This could still really mess you up. And then we have this beauty, the Wolf's Head Cutlass. And now that I look at it, it kind of looks like an amalgamation of all of the Blackbeard swords I know of, except for the Sword of Triton, that is. Well, there's a little bit of the Sword of Triton in the way that it starts thin and goes wide, but that's just about it. But yeah, if you look, it kind of has the upturned quillons of that very cartoony sword that you saw. Has the single-edged blade of a cutlass. It has the wolf's head on that one Blackbeard sword I showed you. And it has a D-guard like a hanger. So yeah, suppose you could call this the quintessential Blackbeard sword if you wanted to. As you can see, on both of the swords I used mirror chrome to bring out the edge, because these swords would be regularly maintained. Blackbeard was very strict with his crew about keeping their weapons in top condition. And as you can see, it is a bit, despite this, the sword has been dusted with some bronze here and there to make it look a bit rusty here and there. This is, after all, meant to be the legendary sword of Blackbeard. The pommel and the guard are silver, and the handle here, the string-wrapped handle, has been painted brass to look like a wire wrap, which would often also be found on many high-end pirate swords. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of how I did. You guys let me know in the comments who you think did best in this challenge. I will try and link Wolf's video down below, and I will try and link Max's as well when he officially uploads his. And yeah, get down in the comments below, and I will get down in the comments below and tell me who you think did the best in this challenge, because I know who my vote is for, and it's not for me. As well as I did, or as well as I think I did, my vote is not for me. There you have it. So, failure of self-confidence aside, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Please do give Wolf and Max a watch. They are brilliant, brilliant guys. And if you like my content, then you're going to love their content. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Jalopiko the Prop Maker, and I will hopefully see you again in my next video. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.